Hi, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. So excited you're here because we're going to be going over my January reads. I ended up actually reading 12 books. If you guys remember, my TBR board game chose 5 books for me, one of them being Anna Karenina, which was, a chunkier book and one that I had been putting off. I actually did get to that one. I ended up getting to all of the ones that it chose for me and then some, obviously. These are going to be in order from my least favorite to most favorite. Mostly in order. Some of them I couldn't decide where to put them, but most of them are in order. So let's get into it. First one is going to be my 2-star, which was The Drift by CJ Tudor. Really 2.5, but Storygraph and all that will let me do half-star ratings. Goodreads wouldn't. So that one I'm going to have to round down to 2. There's no way I'm giving this a 3. So I read this one for Phrique Club, which is hosted by Cliff with Cliff's Dark Gems and Christine over at Secrets Read. I will link their channels down below. It says it's three thrillers in one because it follows like 3 different stories all at the same time. One of them is Hannah. The main character is Hannah in one of the stories. She wakes up in this wreckage of this coach crash with other people. Obviously, some have survived, some have not, and they're trying to figure out how to get out of the bus. Yeah, of course, there are multiple different issues with them being on the coach. The fact that it's snowy and it's very cold and they're not able to get heat, and the rationing food and there's all these different issues. And then the second scenario is the main character Meg. Meg wakes up in a cable car and it's up in the air, obviously, and it's stuck. And she is with several other people and none of them remember how they got there. All they know is they were headed to a place called The Retreat. They're all trying to figure out, how they got there and what the situation is and all these things. And the same situation is it's very cold, the temperature is dropping, and they're trying to figure out how to get out of their situation and all these things. Third scenario, Carter is in this abandoned ski chalet, it says. Carter's at this isolated place. He and a few other people, there aren't many of them, have been there for a while. And, of course it's the same situation. It's very snowy and they're having issues with the storm and the snow, and their generator keeps going out, their electricity keeps going out. There's a lot more situations happening within all of these stories than what I'm telling you, but that's all. I'm being careful not to say anything that's not on the back of the book. But anyways, there are a lot more pieces of the puzzle and there are a lot more things happening. It's like an end of the world type of situation as well, but there's a lot more to this. That's all I'll really say about the plot, but this just did not work for me at all. A lot of the reasons why it didn't work for me, I can't say without spoilers, unfortunately. This is one of those that'll probably make it into my worst books of the year video at the end of the year because I really didn't like it. I mean, there are a lot of I feel like attempts made at important topics, such as the healthcare system and class and money and the things that money can buy you and things like that. There were definitely some plot holes here and some things that weren't explained that really needed to be explained. I'm just like, why? But then also at the same time, I really didn't care. But yeah, there were definitely some plot holes. I really didn't care about any of the characters. I either need to, one, care about the characters or they need to be very interesting. So one or the other needs to happen for me to care about the book. And really neither of them happened in this case. The plot holes, there were a lot of other issues I had with it that like I said, I can't say without ruining the plot of the book for you. I know there are other people that have liked this, but I'm not one of them. I started off into it, I'm like, hey, this is interesting, and I started out that way, but toward the end it got more and more unbelievable and just ridiculous. It got more and more ridiculous, and I'm like, this isn't even believable anymore. There were a couple of scenes in here that I thought weren't even necessary, that I'm just like, I guess were thrown in just for the hell of it, to maybe just add more horror, but I just felt like they were unnecessary, and I'm just like, why? I don't understand why. But being very vague on purpose. But yeah, there were multiple reasons why this didn't work. There were things thrown in here that I'm just like, that just was not freaking necessary. Yeah, I just didn't like it. It just didn't work. That's all I can say without ruining the entire plot for you, but I think you get it. I think you understand the basics of why I didn't like it, and I think that's enough for you to get it. But yeah, 2-star. Next one that I read was for my TikTok book club that I'm no longer in because I no longer am doing TikTok. That is Lights Out by Navessa Alan. Put a picture of it here because I read this one through Hoopla through my library. This one is a dark romance, and I'm fairly new to dark romance. I've only read a couple of them, and this is one of those instances where I was kind of forced out of my comfort zone because this is, you know, we all put our books in and then like we use the spinner wheel and it selects one. So I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a try. So this lady, she has a kink where she watches all these videos online of these masked men, like these sexy videos of these masked men, and sees pictures of them and watches video. You know, she especially loves ones of this man in a ghost mask, and he'll be wielding a knife and he's got tattoos or whatever, and she has these fantasies about him, like chasing her down or whatever. And I won't tell you how it comes about, but a text one day results in this sort of interaction with him, like a real life interaction with this internet person, this internet personality that she's been watching online. And that's all I'll say about that. Yeah, so all of a sudden she is interacting with this man in real life, and it was only a fantasy. It was only an online fantasy of hers. It was only something that she was looking at from a distance. We have the morally gray male character, and you have hers and hers, and you have this like new kink unlocked for her or whatever. So I will say, like, the writing itself was not awesome. The dialogue was pretty cringy. I really was having a hard time with that. And then I read online that the audiobook was amazing. Like, that somebody said the audiobook is a game changer. So I'm like, I've told you guys I have a really hard time with audiobooks. I have a hard time focusing on them. So what I did was I read it while listening to the audiobook, which probably defeats the whole damn purpose of an audiobook. Whatever. But I'm like, I need to get through this book because I'm doing it for book club. I didn't want to give up on it. I wanted to be able to talk to them about it. So I listened to it while reading it. And yeah, I agree. The audiobook, if you're going to read this book, do audiobook if you can. If you're one of those people that could focus on audiobook, do it, because it made all the difference. There are two characters in the audiobook. You got the male and female points of view, and it made all the difference. It made it, the voices, the male voice especially was really, like, the male voice was kind of sexy, and it made the book so much better, because otherwise I don't think I could have made it through it, because it was so cringy otherwise. It really was. So I give this a 3-star, and literally the audiobook is the only thing that made it a 3-star. It's the only thing that saved it. I don't even remember the main character's names at this point. I don't even remember. But he is very witty and you could tell he's very intelligent. He's very smooth. And she is a nurse. She's used to being in charge, and she's used to taking care of things herself. And all of a sudden she has this male who is, he's going to be in charge now. Like, he's very much a take charge kind of guy, and she's not used to that. So it's a really interesting dynamic. She's kind of finally met her match as far as that goes. There were lines in here that made me laugh out loud that were so funny. There was a Gilmore Girls reference that was hysterical. It was really funny to see, like, this macho guy making this Gilmore Girls reference. It cracked me up. Throughout the book, her more darker side came out. Like, she has this dark sense of humor that surprised him sometimes, and that was really funny. It was okay. It was fun, I guess. I have definitely read better dark romance that I enjoyed more, because the dialogue in this was awful. It was very cringy. It was very juvenile. It was definitely insta-love. Yeah, it was cringy as far as that goes. Like I said, the only thing that saved this was the audiobook. That lent itself to the experience for me, and that's the only reason this got 3 stars. Otherwise, it would not have, just because the dialogue was awful. Next up, this is Nightmare Nirvana by Aron Beauregard. This is an extreme horror. I did a whole vlog on judging books by their covers, where I took scary books off my shelves and read them to see if they were as scary as they look. If you haven't seen that, I will link the video down below. I read this for that. I'm not gonna get really into it. It ended up being a 4-star for me. This is a book of short stories. They were very imaginative and creative, and yeah, they weren't overly long. Like, you didn't really get too far into any of them, and yeah, had a good time with it. It was gory, obviously, because it is extreme horror, so you have some gore in places. It was disturbing, and there were some really great stories in here, and they all just give you a little taste. You don't really get too far into any of them or too attached to any of the stories or any of the characters, obviously. And yeah, they just offer you a little taste. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I had a lot of 4 stars this time. I don't know how that ended up happening. I usually have more 3 stars, but somehow I ended up reading some pretty good books. We have The Woman in the Library. This one is by Sulari Gentill. I went into this knowing nothing except for what was on the back of the book, and I would suggest you do the same, because I was really surprised. This ended up being something completely different than what I expected, and I kind of enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. After I read this, I was looking up to see, like, how did I not know what this was about? How did I not know more about this? And because I had seen the book, but I had no idea. Like, it completely caught me off guard, but like in a good way. So, but anyways, I know some people were like confused or whatever, but I really enjoyed it. They're a group of people at the Boston Public Library, and they're strangers. There's a woman's scream heard, and nobody knows where the scream came from or what happened at first, whatever. So all the security guards are like, everybody stay put, don't leave, you know, stay where you are. So this little group of strangers, they strike up a friendship while they wait. Each of them has their own unique reasons for being in the reading room. It just so happens that one of them is a murderer. So I'm not telling you anything that's not on the back of the book. That's all I knew about it. That's it. That's the only thing I knew. It's not anything like I expected. It's not anything like... if you're going to read this, go into it knowing as little as possible, I would say. I say that, but like some people get irritated because it's not exactly what you think it is. So I guess if you don't like surprises, maybe you should look it up. But if you're somebody that likes surprises and like, you know, whatever, but I want to be careful not to say anything, so I don't want to spoil it for you if you don't want to know what the surprise is. But then, like, also, like I said, some people got irritated because it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. It was kind of a cozy atmosphere. It kind of had a cozy vibe to it, and I enjoyed getting to know the characters. There were a couple parts of this that were kind of funny. Sometimes I did get a little confused, but I didn't mind. Like, it didn't take me long to figure out what was going on. So I didn't mind that, and I think that was kind of part of it. It was kind of like part of the mystery of it. It is a mystery. So, but yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. This is another one that I did for that same vlog, the judging books by their covers. If you want to check it out, I'm not going to say too much about it. This is also a book of short stories, and it is called The Secret of Ventriloquism by John Padgett. This was weird. It's a short story collection, but they do kind of go together. Eventually, they do come together. It's not overly scary, I wouldn't say. It's just very disconcerting, and it does have like a sort of sense of dread to it because you don't know where it's going, and you kind of have this bad feeling the whole time. It's just, yeah, it's odd. I haven't read anything like this. I've never read anything like this ever. It was very unique and very disturbing. The stories are written in different points of view in different ways, and like one of them was written in a way that it was in second person, and it was like the character was slowly like losing their mind. So, but since it was written in second person, it's like you were slowly losing your mind. But it was so weird. It was just, I've never read anything like it. I would like to see what else this author has written, and if he's written any full novels, because I would really like to see what else is out there. And this cover is really interesting. There's something about ventriloquist dummies that is just creepy. But yeah, if you want to see my full vlog on this, I kind of updated as I read it. And like I said, it'll be linked down below. Next up, I read Ways to Disappear. This one is by Idra Novey. This one was a pleasant surprise. I had a really good time with this. Beatrice is a Brazilian novelist. She's very popular. She's very widely known, but she has some gambling debt. She's last seen in Copacabana holding a suitcase and a cigar, and she's climbing into an almond tree. So she vanishes. Her translator Emma hears this news of her disappearance, and she decides to fly there to try to help find her. And her, like, Beatrice's family isn't happy to see Emma. They really didn't want her help. They didn't want her there. But Emma and Beatrice's family are trying to figure out what happened to her, what's going on. And of course there is this loan shark, and he's very dangerous. Like, he and his guys are very dangerous people. And they're trying to find Beatrice as well. And there are threats made and all this. But this is one of those, I opened it up to read it and I did not stop until I got to the end. Because I could not stop. It was so good. It has like short, quick chapters. The plot is very unpredictable. And those two things just made it to where I just couldn't put it down. The writing style is very quirky and unique. I thought it was beautiful but subtle at the same time, if that makes sense. But looking at the cover and reading the synopsis, I really thought this was going to be a lot comedic mystery situation. But it actually ended up having a touch of darkness and layers to it that I really didn't expect. And I really appreciated that. I really did. I thought this was going to be so far out of my comfort zone, but the dark tone to it that just I didn't expect to be there appealed to my horror thriller loving side. So it was perfect. It was so perfect. It explores the relationship between author and translator in a way that I've never seen done before. Loved that. There is, you know, complicated family dynamics. There's a little bit of romance, and there are truly, truly scary bad guys. Now, Beatrice is a very fascinating character. I really wanted more of her because none of the other characters were really likable. But Beatrice is so quirky. She's so interesting, and I would have loved to see more of her. She was wild. She was such a wild character. Even though you don't really, most of it is them trying to find her. You really don't get too much of her character, but even still, she kept me guessing until the very end. This was just such a pleasant surprise, and I thought it was brilliant. I thought the layout was brilliant. I thought it was just very well done, and I thought it was excellent. I loved it. Next up, I read The Bog Wife by Kay Chronister. This one was sent to me by Counterpoint Press. I love this cover. I think it is so pretty. So pretty. This one I gave 4 stars to. This is a blend of folk horror and magical realism. This follows 5 siblings and their bog, because the bog very much is a character as well. And they're bound to the land by an ancient contract. Basically, they provide for the land provides for them. Traditionally, when the patriarch of the family is sacrificed to the bog then provides a wife for the eldest son. However, this time a wife is not provided. So that leaves the siblings suddenly trying to figure out what to do, because all of a sudden their future is just unknown. They've always had this tradition. They've always known exactly what is expected. They've always known exactly what their future holds, and all of a sudden it is just all undecided. I loved this. I loved this more than I expected to. It wasn't overly scary. It did have a gothic vibe to it, and for me, it had the same vibes as We Have Always Lived in the Castle. If you've read that, it had the same sort of vibes because of the house that they live in. Kind of had that same sort of gothic vibe to it, and the kind of quirky, sort of weird characters, and those were the reasons that it reminded me of that book. But I really loved it. It is very unique and very well written. There are themes of loyalty, tradition, depression, complicated family dynamics, and loneliness. The setting is perfection. It is earthy and atmospheric as the story takes you through all the seasons of the bog. Not only that, but like I said, the house they live in is a whole vibe too. And the descriptions were so vivid that it felt like I was there. All of the characters were really well developed. The siblings have all been pretty isolated from society. Very isolated from society, actually. So they're all pretty out of touch with reality, and they're all very naive. And now they're having to figure out how to do all these things. They're trying to figure out what to do, and they don't have the patriarch of the family anymore. They don't have a mother. And they, even though they're adults, they're very, very naive. And they all have their own way of dealing with things. They all have their own way of doing things. Even though they're having to deal with these very adult things, they don't have the life experiences that it takes to handle any of this stuff. So I worried about them the whole time. That was like the dread. That was the sense of dread for me, was worrying about them. I really did. I felt for the characters and I got really attached to them. If you're into folk horror or magical realism, or if you want something that isn't overly gory or overly scary, you might really enjoy this one. Next, I read Blood on the Tracks by Shuzo Oshimi. This is book 1 of a 17-book series, but I loved this enough that I just went ahead and got the series. Should I have? Probably not, but I did. This is a horror manga about a toxic, overprotective mother. It's really all I can say about the plot. Now, this is the first book in the series. It is a slow start, but let me tell you, I am hooked now. It's so unsettling because of the realness of it. It's, yeah. To take something so normal, like a mother-son relationship, and flip it on its head and make it so just unnerving. Yeah, this is really good. I did feel a sense of dread and unease from the very beginning with this one. I just could feel it. And like I said, it was something so real and something that it's a mother-son relationship. That's what this is about. And yeah, it was just, I have no words. I have no words. It's so good. And I'm hooked and I can't wait to read the rest of the series. I do have it on my shelf and I will definitely be reading like 1 or 2 of these probably every month. I mean, they're quick because it is horror. It's manga, so they're fairly quick reads, but I'll probably just read 1 or 2 a month because I want to savor it. Because I know there are only 17 books in the series, so I'll probably savor it and probably have it done by the end of the year, but it's so good. I can't wait to see where it goes from here. I've heard that it gets better, and I've heard this is really good, and I can't wait. Next up, I read All the Fiends of Hell by Adam L.G. Nevill. This is another one I read in the Judging Books by Their Cover vlog. I'll link it down below. This is an apocalyptic horror, and it involves these creatures that aren't of the earth, and they're feeding on humans. So this guy is trying to save himself, and he's taken these kids under his wing as well, and they're trying to get to the sea because they're told that that's the safest place. And they meet other humans along the way as well, but most people are gone. Most people aren't there, so it's very quiet and very eerie. And yeah, this one was terrifying. It's really terrifying because it was just the imagining of like no one else being there and just being one of the last humans on Earth. And these creatures were very scary, and the sky has this red, this like redness to it. This was very, very scary, and probably one of the scarier books that I've read. It's a tie between this one and one other one that I've read that was very scary. But yeah, this is one of the scary books that I've read just because it was hard to imagine. And there are scary villains in this, both human and non-human. And yeah, it was really good. If you want to see my vlog on that, like I said, it'll be linked down below. I had 2 5-star reads, so we'll get to those now. It's really hilarious, my 5-star reads, because they are so wildly different, and it just shows my taste is all over the place. And I loved them for different reasons. It's really funny. First one is Lube Me Up with Fried Grease by Phrique. Guys, this was so funny. This is my first splatterpunk erotica, and honestly, I didn't know those 2 genres could be combined until now, but now I need more. He is working on a part 2 of this, and I can't freaking wait. I can't freaking wait. Because it's gonna be so good. He's already given hints kind of like what it's about and stuff. I can't wait. I have to have it. I just have to. As you can imagine by looking at this cover, this was so over the top and ridiculous. But in a really good way. This is one of those, like, you think it can't get any more bizarre, and then you turn the page and yeah, it sure can. And that's where I was at with this. It just kept getting more and more wild. And yeah, I had an absolute freaking blast reading this. My favorite thing is how the author uses random fast food words in the place of dirty words in this book. so he kind of censored it. But the words he used in place of the dirty words were hysterical. Oh my god, let me see if I can find an example because that was so funny. Why would she want to drive through chicken selects when she can have a Kentucky Fried Drumstick with all the trimmings and crunchy bits? Yeah. Some of the words that he chose to use in place of the dirty words was hysterical. Chili bowl, special sauce, spicy deluxe. It's so funny. But yeah, it's hysterical. I'm sorry if you hear that beeping. It is annoying. There's construction going on, so you just never know. But anyways, if you read this, be prepared for some really hilarious and disturbing imagery involving some of your favorite fast food icons, because it's all there. I freaking love Phrique's unique sense of humor and his unique writing style. He's so creative and so witty, and it definitely comes through in this. And this is my second book by him, and I have absolutely loved both of them and laughed hysterically the whole way through. Obviously, this does not take itself too seriously. It's just a lot of fun, but it was great. And my final book and my favorite was Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I got the one that's translated by Richard Pevier and Larissa Volokonsky. You know, the one that I had was very small print, and it's a much older copy. I got the one that I could write in the margins and, you know, annotate the crap out of. So, yeah, I freaking loved this. It was gorgeous, an absolute masterpiece, and I definitely see what the hype is about. You know, on one hand, I'm sorry that it took me so long to read it, but on the other hand, I am glad that I waited so long to read it, because if I had read it, definitely if I had read it 20 years ago, I would not have appreciated it. I would not have had the life experiences that I do now to appreciate some of the circumstances in this book. But even 5 years ago, I would not have appreciated this book as much because of the life experiences that I've had since then. There's just certain things that I've been through that would not have given me the appreciation for this that I do now. You know what I mean? And this is one of those, I think if you read this at different times in your life, you're going to get different things out of it. So maybe if I'd read it 20 years ago, I would have reread it and gotten something different out of it. I don't know. But I'm glad that I waited just for that reason, because I appreciated it so much now. And I understood the characters more. Yeah, I loved it. This is, I mean, I'm sure you know the story. Because it is a classic. I'm sure you've at least heard the story if you haven't read it, or if you haven't, I think there are like 5 million movies. I haven't watched any of the movies because I wanted to read the book first. But it's a love story, and it's a tragedy. It's a human study. It's just stunning. It's gorgeous. It is about religion and politics, Russian society, farming, human behavior, women's rights, you know, city life versus country life. There's just so much. I could go on and on. There's love and hate and jealousy and death and so many different things in this that I could do a whole vlog on this. I could go on and on. I made so many notes and highlighted so many quotes that were so gorgeous and so relatable even. But there were plenty of characters in here to get to know. There are plenty of characters in here to get attached to, and I really did. I grew so attached to them because this is a chunky book, and I took my time to read this. I did not read this in a week. I did not read this in a day. I took the entire month to read this. I kind of plotted it out to where I knew how much I needed to get to read, and I read some each day because I knew that this was something that I wanted to, you know, sink into and really take my time with, and I didn't want to rush through it because I knew it's one that needed my time and attention. So it took me the entire month, but worth it. If you haven't read it yet, I think it is definitely worth your time, and it's definitely worth your patience. And even if I don't care if it takes you 6 months to read it, it's fine. Like take your time with it. I did it in a month only because I was trying to just do it for January. I didn't have to. I'd already told myself, hey, if it takes you longer than a month, you're going to give yourself grace on this one because it's a classic masterpiece and it deserves your attention. So, but I chose to do it in a month. I just rationed it out to where I could do it. But it's one of those, like, it's fine. Take your time. If it takes you 2 months, 6 months, whatever, it is fine. It's worth it. It's absolutely gorgeous. It is layered, and there's so many complex relationships in this, and there's so many complex themes in this, and feelings, and I'm not going to say too much. I'm not going to give anything away on this. Obviously, I'm very careful about that, but obviously it is heartbreaking as well, but it's gorgeous. This is one of my favorite books that I've ever read. I loved it. I'm glad that I read it when I did. I think it came at the perfect time, and so glad that I finally read it. So glad that my TBR game chose this one. I'm sorry it took me so long to read it. I definitely have my favorite character. I loved Levin a lot, but also I did have an appreciation for Anna, and I did understand Anna, and I understood what led her on her path, and yeah, I liked it a lot. I loved it. I did read another book, because I said 12, that was 11. There's another book that I read. I'm not going to tell you guys about it because it's coming up in next week's video. Next Friday, you're going to get my Valentine's video, and I went on 3 blind dates with books, and I'm going to take you along, and I'm going to take you along on my dates, and then I'm going to tell you how my dates went. So that's next week. I will see you next Friday. Bye for now.